So, I've heard the theory over and over again. Bitcoin price isn't what's going to trigger alt season. It's Ethereum's price that's going to trigger alt season. They never really told me what Ethereum price. Maybe it's 3,000, maybe it's something else. I'm not really sure. Someone has said, Bitcoin has decoupled from alts because the dominance keeps rising. I don't think that's necessarily true. We saw this during before the last altcoin run as well, although we are a couple months behind if we compare it to the last alt season. So, is it going to be true that Ethereum is going to trigger alt season? And if it's about to happen, because Ethereum has been going up against Bitcoin for the last month or so, or is that just conjecture? Let's look at the Ethereum ratio against BTC first, because I think that is actually the most important. You look at the Ethereum ratio, this is for the last 6 months. As you can see, for the last 6 months, we've been going down, 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 down. Whoop. We've been going up since about May 8th, about a month ago. If you look at the 1 year, it's very noticeable, but very, very slight. We are about the same place as March of this year, February, March of this year, around March of this year. Look at the 5-year graph. Look at this. We are pretty much back to where we were at the in the middle of 2020 when it comes to Ethereum. We go to max, obviously, 2020. Around this time we bottomed out, and this time we bottomed in 2025. This is not that great because this means we're 5-6 years apart from the last bottom. But instead of 4, and 4 is the 1 cycle thing. But if that is true, then we are starting to make a little bit of a reversal. And if you can really notice, we haven't quite had a reversal like this that lasted this long on Ethereum in any spate of the last year, in the last 5 years. I mean, there's been a couple of the last 5 years, but whenever something like this happened, it does generally mean that we might actually have a bit of a resurrection. Obviously, it depends on the entire market and the macro economy, but there is a chance that this little bump here does signal that we might actually go up. Based on the last 5 years, maybe like a 30-40% chance that this actually does happen. Now, why would this actually happen? Well, because Bitcoin, you don't really make that many coins off the Bitcoin blockchain, but Ethereum has a lot of tokens and they make up a large part of the market. You think about a lot of the meme coins, like Floki, part of Floki at least, Pepe, all those things I think are generally ERC20 coins. So their pair, for the most part, is with Ethereum. So if Ethereum goes up, they kind of get dragged up. And I still think there are more big ERC coins out there than there are SPL or any other network. Now, ERC's dominance is waning as other big networks come up, but it hasn't waned yet. Just like if you look at the Ethereum dominance in the TVL market, it's still pretty dominant in the TVL market, despite the fact that Solana has more transactions. It's even passed up Ethereum in the amount of fees collected. The old money is still at Ethereum, and that's not going to change for quite a while. Therefore, if Ethereum does come up, it does have the potential to actually bring a lot of things up with it, including much of the ERC market. Now, if a lot of the big ERC coins start coming up, that's a substantial portion of the altcoin market coming up. Other people will see that, realize that maybe altcoin season is on the way, and they'll even buy the non-ERC coins. So in that specific method, an Ethereum ERC come up could eventually result in an SPL come up and also SUI come up in all the other networks, because it would trigger a signal for the altcoin market to happen. Now, before this cycle, it was always Bitcoin that was the trigger signal for the altcoin market to happen. Will it actually be different this time? Because Bitcoin is basically riding high on Michael Saylor and other big investments. Ethereum doesn't have that many institutional backers buying its ETF or just buying coins like Michael Saylor. I have heard some rumors that BlackRock is selling Bitcoin for Ethereum, although I cannot confirm those rumors. Plus, like, if you really think about it, the BTC network isn't really used to do anything, while like there's still a good amount of stablecoin activity on the Ethereum network. If you're talking about like actual utility of like, financial transactions or just DeFi or stuff like that, Ethereum obviously still beats Bitcoin out. It is still the most valuable network when it comes to that. It's just not the top network. It doesn't really have the institutional investment in it that Bitcoin does. But if anything, it could possibly get there. I know we talk a lot on this channel about how Ethereum is being caught up by the other big, layer one networks. But for right now, it's still number one, and most likely it'll be number one for quite some time. It might get taken over in the next cycle, but for this cycle, it's still going to be number one. And it's going to be very, very hard for any coin to challenge that just because of the giant head start that Ethereum has. Now, that being said, it's not necessarily the case that everything depends on Ethereum. If this was 4, 5, 6 years ago, I would have completely agree with you that, most all the altcoins or alt tokens outside the other layer ones are indeed ERC20. That is no longer the case anymore. SPL has risen up. Just, don't mind the meme coins for a moment. There are other serious projects on Solana, Sui, Binance, and the other networks as well. And those coins do represent a significant portion of the market. I still think ERC is mostly bigger than all of them combined when it comes to significant coins with significant market cap, but those are slowly growing, and that's going to dampen Ethereum's influence in the market. But because the TVL dominance is so much, and a lot of the, just not even just the meme coins, but like a lot of the, like the top 50, top 100 coins are actually Ethereum. And ERC still has a lot more in the top 100 than anything else. I mean, there's probably just as many Solana coins as Ethereum coins, but because it's been around for a long time and a lot of the top projects are basically based themselves on Ethereum and haven't moved, they have a lot more in the top ranks than like a coin than a network like Solana or Sui at this point. So, you think, I'm not really sure how many coins are actually ERC, but I can see like quite a few coins are actually ERC that are in the top 50 or top 100, like either Ethereum or Layer 2. And because of that, I think there is some kind of evidence to actually support this theory that if Ethereum comes up, the other coins may come up. Now, Ethereum honestly depends a lot on Bitcoin price, but recently Ethereum's been growing just as much or even more on Bitcoin. And it's reached as high as 2,800 when Bitcoin reached 112,000. Obviously, it's gone back down to 2,600 now since Bitcoin is gone down to about Bitcoin has gone down to about 104, 105,000. But even during this drop, Ethereum did not lose its ratio against Bitcoin. As you can see, like the rest of the year from December of last year, it basically has come down as Bitcoin dropped because it dropped more than Bitcoin. But now, as Bitcoin is went to 112 and then basically dropped down, Ethereum has kind of like maintained its ratio. So, if Bitcoin goes to 115, Ethereum might actually break 3K. And maybe when Ethereum breaks 3K, that could actually cause things to really start exploding. Now, if you think that it will take until Ethereum breaks its all-time high at 4,800, that might take a while, and you might be waiting for 130, 140K on Bitcoin, because Ethereum is still very highly correlated to Bitcoin price. And I think if Bitcoin goes to 140, obviously, Ethereum might actually break $4,800. And if at that point, the other alts and the ERCs go crazy. Now, when Ethereum goes up, I expect some of the smaller ERCs that are only traded against Ethereum to go up first. And then the bigger ERCs will probably start to get dragged by those smaller ERCs. And then the entire Ethereum ecosystem is going to get dragged up. The question is, what price is that? Some people are saying 3,000 because we're seeing like little inklings of exponential growth when Bitcoin hit 112,000 last time. If Bitcoin hits 140, will we see more of that exponential growth? And that exponential growth will lift the entire ERC market system, which will make it look like that altcoin season is underway, which would actually make, in turn, people buy the other networks as well, because they think altcoin season is underway. Now, ironically, I think when that happens, the other smaller networks will actually rise faster. People will recognize how convenient it is to actually use the other networks over Ethereum, and they'll actually grow more than Ethereum and maybe even challenge its dominance. But for right now, I think there is some credibility to the kind of thinking that says Ethereum is actually the one that we should be looking at and not so much Bitcoin. And as for the price, I think like a couple of points of price you'll want to look at are $3,000 first, and then $4,000, and then finally $4,800, which is the all-time high. So look for those marks on Ethereum. I don't expect those to actually pass until later in this fall, probably like October, November. But if it starts happening this summer, well, be prepared. So that's the news for today. Let me know what you think. Like and subscribe. Hit that bell notifications button. Thank you and have a nice day.